Welcome to Diasporaa, the show where we share the remarkable stories of immigrants from the Indian subcontinent. I'm your host, Aditya Mehta, and each week we sit down with individuals who have made the journey over and explore their experiences, their challenges, their triumphs. We delve into their unique perspectives on adapting to a new culture while staying connected to their roots. Today we're joined by Passi, a real estate entrepreneur with a very interesting immigrant story. Originally from New Delhi in India, he moved to the US in '07 for his undergrad at North Dakota State University because he wanted his first state to be the one which is the last for everybody else. He lived in the Midwest before moving back to India to run a charitable 911 emergency service before returning to Seattle in 2014 with Amazon. He's been in Seattle ever since, and in 2020 he transitioned to real estate and now runs Meet the Passis, a well-known local brokerage company. I know Passi from my property management company. We've done some business together as well. And this is the first time we're meeting in person. So how about that? Anyway, let's dive into this week's conversation. So Passi, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, man.
First, I routinely ask my guests to describe their hometown if it was an American city. So what would you equate Delhi to? I have not had anyone give me a successful comparison till now.
See, Delhi has a lot of character. It has so much history. And then Delhi is also now an urban metropolitan, right? And so it's not one city in America that it can relate to. This a combination of two. I'd say a combination of Philadelphia and New York is kind of what Delhi is.
Okay.
Because there's all that history of what happened in American history, for instance, as well as the thousands of years of conquest that Delhi has gone through. I feel like that's a bit of an overlap. And then the traditional architecture that I see in Philadelphia and New York, and then even in parts of Delhi, they've built things around historical architecture, which kind of makes me think of, Philadelphia and New York combo as sort of what Delhi is.
Yeah, I like the history aspect. Philly's definitely got a lot of history around the independence movement and stuff like that. So were you just born there or you also grew up in Delhi?
I grew up in Delhi. I moved to the States for my bachelor's. So I finished my high school and then I moved here. North Dakota State, like you mentioned.
What part of Delhi were you in?
South Delhi, Nehru Enclave, in front of the biggest pirated market in the world. Nehru Place is sort of the area, and like across from that about a block from that.
So one interesting thing is that in the US, mostly the north and the west part of the city is nicer. But in India, it's the south and the west part of the city, which is nicer. And I looked into this. And it's to do with the way the wind blows. And because the wind would blow from the factories in certain directions, those were the poorer parts of town. And the ones which were on the leeward side were where the nicer parts of town became because of the way the smoke would blow. It was very interesting thing I discovered about what part of the city is usually nicer. And are you a Delhi Punjabi? Or are you a different type of Delhiite?
I am a Delhi Punjabi by sort of my genetics. But when I'd say I experience Delhi like a true melting pot. I feel like living in Delhi, I can relate to every part of India in some way or the other because I had friends from all over.
Yeah.
My family used to speak Punjabi and my dad was born and brought up in Punjab and they grew up in Delhi.
Yeah.
And my mom's side of the family was from Lahore, the West Punjab side of things.
So there's a large Punjabi contingent in Delhi, obviously, and because Delhi is not in any, like how Bombay is in Maharashtra. So there is a big Marathi presence by virtue of being in Maharashtra. But then you have the melting pot. So I'm a Bombay Gujarati, and our experience was very opposite, where everybody I know is Gujarati. My whole building, only Gujaratis are allowed, and Marwadis as a related, or Jain people for that matter. But I do speak Marathi fluently, but I'm, a Bombay Gujarati by ethnicity. So we didn't get to have that kind of melting pot experience, even though Bombay is as cosmopolitan as Delhi is. So what made you decide to go to the fine institute that NDSU is?
Hey man, the Desi mentality of whoever offers the best scholarship. I was between San Jose State and North Dakota State. San Jose State didn't accept majority of my credits. And at the time, I was about 17, 18. I didn't have enough exposure to America. So for me, it was primarily, hey, let's save the parents some money and see where we can go. And that's how it ended up in North Dakota.
Did you use one of those consultants that were in India all over the place?
I did not. I used something called a twinning program, which they had back in time in Gurugram as well as in Bangalore. And essentially, what you do is you do 6 months of the freshman year in India and then you transition your transition your credits to America. And so that was a hack to sort of avoid the SATs.
Yeah, interesting.
And I almost became a dentist, actually.
Okay.
Everybody in my family is doctors. Besides, I'm the only one who's not in healthcare. And
Yeah.
I kind of realized that wasn't my thing. And yeah, I ended up in computer science engineering in North Dakota State.
Okay. So Mehtas are accountants, and my whole family, everybody is either a practicing accountant or has a CA but doesn't practice. So I was the first one not to go down that route in my family. So my grandfather was not too happy about it because he's a practicing CA. And then I went and gave money to the Britishers by going to London Business School. So he was even more upset,
probably more upset
as a person of that generation. But then my brother became a stand-up comedian. So now I'm not the black sheep in the family anymore.
So you broke the mold, but your brother's like, there is no mold.
My mom says one kid does stand-up, one kid does startup, and nobody wants to join my business. So did you know what you were getting into in terms of the weather and the type of place North Dakota is? Like extremely rural, very empty.
I was told it was going to be a small town. It was.
Yeah.
There were about 250,000 people back then when I was there. I think it's grown quite a bit since then. I was given weird stories before moving. They were like, hey man, in the winters it gets so cold, people go underground and drink brandy all day. Like strange rumors I heard about the place.
Yeah.
And granted, it was the fifth most drunk city when I first moved there. There was really not much going on. I didn't know much about North Dakota besides what I had sort of seen on the internet. And I knew there were going to be bisons at some point somewhere, which there were.
Yeah.
The sports ambassador for the school as well. But yeah, I didn't know much about it. I purely came in excited that, hey, I was going to get to be in America. And I was just excited that, hey, I'm not going to get to... I just imagined myself as a dentist or as a physician that my dad was. And I was like, this is not for me.
So reason I asked about the consultant and about knowing in advance, somebody I know used one of these consultants that are popped up in malls all over the country. And, they have a conflict of interest usually because they're getting commissions or whatever. So this guy tells me, oh, I'm going to Pittsburgh State University. I'm like, okay, good for you. And being a bit of an aviation nerd, I was like, what's your routing? What are you flying? Some airline. And I said, he said, yeah, it's going to go to like Chicago and then go to Kansas City. And then from there I drive. And I said, that makes no sense. Like, why don't you just fly into Pittsburgh?
Sure.
He's like, oh, they don't have an airport. It was Pittsburgh, Kansas.
Oh.
And he didn't know. He thought he's going to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And he didn't put two and two together. Because, like never left the country, normal middle class family, right? So he landed up in Pittsburgh, Kansas. There was maybe 40 Indians in the whole school. And he didn't last for more than a year. Because he was expecting this mid-sized city with things to do and so on and so forth. And he landed up in Pittsburgh, Kansas.
I can relate. It was a huge transition, right? Delhi is this hustle and bustle, total sensory overload everywhere. And then you go in the middle of nowhere. And even Americans don't know enough about like Fargo for that matter. In fact, I bring up Fargo now in Seattle and people are like, really? You actually lived in North Dakota? I'm like, yeah, I did,
Yeah. Did you get to go to Mount Rushmore?
That is South Dakota. I did go there. I think it's the most anticlimactic experience I've had.
That's what I've been told. That is most
recommend
underwhelming.
It is.
And especially given how far it is to get there.
Yeah, because it's like a 12-hour drive from where we were and we went all the way and I was like, what? That over there? Okay, I guess we're done.
It's like the Hollywood sign in a way. Like it's a lot smaller than you imagine it to be.
I think the Hollywood sign has more points over Mount Rushmore in my opinion.
Sure. Yeah. So you did computer science. Was that your first trip to the US?
It was my first trip. I'd never been. I came for computer science because I had just done some programming courses in high school and I wasn't really, it wasn't a choice that I made. It's not like I was trying to be the stereotypical techie. But yeah, I did management information systems after that. I thought I might try and go into project management or some sort of business line back then as well. But
sure.
When I graduated, it was the biggest crash, the 2008-2009 crash, and there weren't enough jobs.
I graduated around the same time.
Yeah.
So you went for your bachelor's degree.
Yes.
And back then, it wasn't very common for people from India to do bachelor's degree. It was mostly people coming for master's.
Correct.
So do you think that helped you in any way by coming here and spending 4 years at a younger age versus 2 years for master's?
I think so. I was a spoiled Delhi kid. And
I was the Bombay equivalent of that.
Yeah. And had all the comforts that a middle-class family had and everything taken care of. And then I came here and I had the reality check of my life. And I think I'm glad it happened at an earlier age than happening for most, folks that move here for masters, let's say mid-20s, late 20s, and early 30s. I do think it was the right thing that happened to me. I just wish it had, I have no regrets. Being in Fargo, I picked up archery, I went ice fishing. Wow. It was interesting things like my first boss took me on the lake and I got exposed to how to be on boats. So probably wouldn't have gotten those experiences in California. Maybe it would have been like more hiking or more like, urbanized experiences, but it was good.
But that credit to you for doing those things, because I see most people who come here, they don't experience that.
Yeah.
And especially in Seattle, I've seen so many techies who've been here for 20 years and they've never been on a lake. And I'm like, it's not the US's loss.
Yeah.
They're getting the best of your brains and your productivity. It's your loss for you not making the most of what this country has to offer.
It is. And I'm in real estate, and I can tell you right now that one of the personal motivations for me is, hey, you guys realize the best way to experience Seattle is from the water.
Yeah.
Like that is how the Puget Sound and the Lake Sammamish, Lake Washington, that's really the real way. Go kayaking or anything you can. And my family has a boat as well, and we do that all the time. We expose people to come into the middle of the lake. I'm like, this is how you see Seattle. This is the true essence of living in the...
I'm going to invite myself onto your
You're already invited.
That's great. So for me, what I realized is I picked up a lot of American habits. I came here at 17.
Sure.
I was 1 year younger than my batch anyways. And I graduated shortly before I turned 21. And I was also spoiled South Bombay brat.
Yep.
The first 2 days, I slept hungry because nobody called me for dinner. Like, dinner's being served, come eat.
Yeah, no.
And the dining hall was closed.
Yep.
And in your early days, you were converting everything to rupees.
Exactly.
So I'm like, I'm not going to go to the restaurant outside the campus and spend 400 rupees on dinner. So I just slept without eating. Did you have any funny stories in the start due to like a cultural difference?
It was, the first thing I did was I spent $60 to get a bicycle from Walmart.
Yeah.
And then I had a flat. And that was my first realization that I'm no longer in India anymore. It was like, go to the dude across the street and he will fix it for 2 rupees back then. And it was literally sort of a favor they used to do. And then I had to figure out how to fix a flat on my own.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what did I sign up for? You have to do everything here on your own. And I didn't have a bed sheet on the school mattress for the longest time because it's like, who the hell's going to make that? Let's do one less step. But then thankfully one of my relatives actually sent me something and I was like, yeah, maybe I should live like a regular human.
We were once on a road trip. We were passing through rural Texas, Lubbock, Texas to be precise. I had a tire burst and luckily the car didn't flip or anything, but it was 4 Indian guys and everyone's like, yeah, my driver would do that. So we called 911 and the cop was, though he was flabbergasted, he was nice enough to change our tire for us.
Super nice guy.
It was a story for the ages. So now North Dakota State University, did they have a big like recruitment program outside of college? What did you do right after?
They did. I was surprised at how many Indians were already there. And they were mostly in PhD and master's programs. And it almost felt like I went from India to India for the first couple of semesters because the professors were Indian, all the comp science engineering. And I called my mom. I'm like, I don't know why you guys are paying in dollars right now. I could have had this experience back there. But then I was like, okay, let's not think small. Let's actually try to understand the cultural nuances here. I mean, it is a different format of the way they teach.
Sure.
And so I would say it was more or less, it felt like India in the beginning. And then it transitioned over to trying out different things.
Yeah. What was your first job outside of college?
Inside of college was IT help desk for the college. That was my side hustle to have extra money on hands. And then first job was working for a company called Multiband, which got bought out by DirecTV, which got bought out by AT&T. Eventually, I used to work for the director of marketing and developed a CRM, which, use that. So that was my first gig out of school.
Did you make any friends that you're still in touch with?
I am actually. I got an invite for a 40th birthday party for North Dakota. I might make that trip. When I left North Dakota, I left with the thinking that I don't think I'm going to come back. But yeah, I've sort of done a decent job of staying connected with someone.
So you have been back after graduating?
No, I did. I worked at Microsoft there for a while after. And that's when a company here in Seattle found me and brought me here to Seattle.
So you came to Seattle before you moved back briefly to India?
That is correct. I had gotten exposed to Seattle. I'd seen what it felt like. And then they sent me back to Fargo because that's where Microsoft was. And they wanted me there working with Microsoft.
Okay.
And it was a consulting company called Hitachi. And I was on the Microsoft campus. They had, at the time, about 5,000 people that worked there.
Oh, wow.
Decent amount of...
I wouldn't have thought of that.
Yeah, all of Microsoft HRs run there as well. All of their ERP as well. All the CRM tools were also built there as well. So that was an acquisition that Microsoft had done a while ago. And
decided to stay put.
So that was an interesting experience. But by the end of it, I was sort of tuned out where I actually took a sabbatical after that and I went back to India.
Yeah, let's take a short break now. And when we come back, we'll talk about what you did in India and then your eventual move back.
Sounds good.
So we'll be right back after these messages.
Children are the greatest joy and our best hope for a better future. Friends, they are the future. But did you know that millions of kids are facing hunger every day? Food is not just food. It's energy, health, confidence, hope, and even love. Yes, love.
Thank you!
Learn more about how No Kid Hungry is helping end child hunger in America at helpnokidhungry.org.
Are you ready to discover remarkable stories of resilience and cultural connection? This is Diaspora, a show sharing the journeys of first-generation immigrants from the Indian subcontinent now building their lives in North America. Inspiring, insightful, and always engaging, Diaspora offers a unique perspective on the immigrant experience. Join me, Aditya Mehta, my guests, on the Diaspora Show every Wednesday at 2 p.m. right here on KKNW.
Talk radio that will get you thinking. Alternative Talk 1150.
Welcome back to Diaspora on KKNW, where we share interesting stories of first-generation immigrants from the Indian subcontinent. We are talking to Passi, a real estate entrepreneur and ex-Amazonian based in Seattle. Before we get back to talking to Passi, I want to take a moment to remind you to subscribe to our channel on YouTube. You can find all our episodes in video form there. So Passi, what made you take some time off to go back to India? And the reason I ask is, in general, if you leave, it's very hard to find a way to come back.
Very true. I decided to pull the plug on America completely. I decided I'm done. I think the transition of moving from a big city to a small town hit me after like 4.5, 5 years, where I was like, I think I've hit my wall. And I was trying to move out, and with the job market still wasn't quite supportive of where the transitions I wanted to do.
It's the worst time to be in the US, pretty much.
It really was.
I graduated as a marketing major. I had no chance. And my minor was in urban planning.
Oh, wow.
These were not jobs that anybody had ever sponsored a visa for.
I can understand, yeah. And so I pulled the plug. I had watched this TED Talk about an organization called United Hatzalah, which was doing this emergency medical ambucycle thing in Israel. And I was like, yeah, this is needed in India. Why don't I take the lead on this? So I was like, I'm the only black sheep in my family who's not done anything in healthcare. Maybe this is the way I get back in.
Sure.
And my mom freaked out. She's like, what is wrong with you? Why would you come back? And I moved back and I did the research. It was like I sat in ambulances and got Hero Honda to sponsor one bike. And at the time I was with somebody who was diplomatically very well connected in Delhi. Her parents were.
Isn't everyone connected to someone in Delhi? That's the joke that
That is
Bombay
kind of the
people-
only way you used to get things done. Things have improved, I would
Sure.
say, because I try to go as often as I can and visit. But yeah, back then it was a fun thing to try, and I realized I was in over my head in about 3 months. And I was like, I could do this, but I don't have the ministers and the politicians and the lawyers and the top doctors backing me up. I'm just another 20-some-old trying to start a startup in Delhi, and I think I'm being a little too naive. So I pulled the plug on that plan 3 months later and went to Goa. I was like, I'm just going to go. I'm just going to sit in Goa and figure out what I'm going to do.
You know what? I went back to India. I did a bunch of startup ideas. I evaluated them. 4 or 5 months, I concluded that I don't think this is for me, and I went to Goa.
So yeah, it's funny. We have a lot of commonalities in our journey.
Yeah. But after that, I joined my family business.
Okay.
And I was there for 7 years. So that's why I said it's hard to come back once you're gone.
Right.
Like your OPT is expired and everything's done.
So I actually did a hack. I had a parallel H1 app that actually that happened later, but I went there to resign, and the vice president at the time's like, why are you leaving?
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I'm leaving because I don't want to do this. He's like, okay, there's an option of unpaid leave of absence. I'm like, bro, you just saved me. I didn't even know that was a thing. So my H1 cycle paused, essentially. H1B cycle paused when I left.
Yeah.
And because I was like, these guys control the cards, I actually self-sponsored another H1 through a friend in Fargo who ran a restaurant. And I was like, I'm going to keep another H1 running just in case these guys change their mind.
Sure.
And so I didn't close the loop on it completely, but...
That's smart, yeah. Yeah, our listeners know that all Indians are immigration experts because of the work that
nothing I did was illegal. I followed all the rules by the book, but at the same time, I was like, how do I make sure? Because my mom was freaking out. I did it because she was freaking out that I'm like all set and I'm like walking away from what they define as settled in India.
Yeah, a few episodes ago, we were talking about how Indian society is always taking you to the next step of your life. So the minute you finish your degree, it's like now get a job, get married, now have the first child. Yeah. So it comes from a place of like caring and concern. It doesn't usually help the cause in that sense.
Yeah. And so my exposure to Amazon sort of happened there because I then ran an e-commerce business for a while. And then I started selling FBA, which is, fulfillment by Amazon for a while. And
what kind of stuff were you selling?
Man, handicrafts of all sorts, like yoga mats. We designed yoga mats in Manipur. That was a cool experience just to go in a rural village and work with artisans. And I have a picture of that because one of the coolest experiences I had was I went to this village and my mom and I went. We couldn't communicate. We needed a local Manipuri person to communicate for us. And we were trying to offer these guys like, hey, you whatever you want, we'll help you grow. We'll get your products to the world. They're like, we don't care.
Yeah.
We don't need you to do that for us.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I have the rules of the world and the rules of sort of humanity inside.
And capitalism.
And I'm like, this is not working. This should have motivated them and it didn't. And for me, that was the first definition of realizing that satisfaction and happiness is defined differently with most people.
Yeah, and I think most Indians don't have much knowledge about that part of the country, like the Northeast.
Yep.
And I'm hoping to get a guest from that part of the country soon that we can talk about. I did have a Delhi Punjabi who spent part of his time in Assam.
Okay.
He's now a well-known chef in Canada. So that was a very interesting conversation.
My exposure was limited to Imphal, Manipur, and those.
And that's not even like because people who go to the Northeast, they'll either go to like Sikkim or Assam. Those are the bigger kind of spots, but this is way beyond that.
Sort of like I was walking around Connaught Place, Central Delhi, and I get into the State Emporium of Manipur. I'm like, this is a cool mat. Where do they make this?
Yeah.
Through conversations, talk to the owner, all Manipuri folks, and they're like, yeah, this is a kauna grass. It only grows in this part of India.
Wow.
And I'm like, this is cool. And the guy said something that like really caught my attention. He's like, if you lie down on this thing, it can like moderate your blood pressure. It can keep you cool in the summers. It can keep you warm in the winters if you lie down on this. I'm like, this is what I'm going to do with my life now.
And it's great fodder for selling in the US. It's a great story.
That's exactly what it was. It's like, I have to put this product in front of them. In most cases, parts of Asia have sort of copied whatever India can deliver when it comes to handmade handicrafts. But I'm like, this thing can't be copied. It only grows. This grass is a wild grass. It grows only in Manipur. I'm like, this will be a cool thing to work on.
Yeah, we briefly tried to import copper bottles from India.
Wow.
I do think there's a market, but I think we kind of gave up. Like we got bored of it. But that was our first business when my wife and I moved to North America about 7 years ago.
I thought of that one too. And then I saw the copper vessels in all the Indian stores.
Yeah.
So I was like, I have to do something different if I consider it. So I can understand why you probably...
If you have a whole like yoga, sustainability, high-end packaging, kind of like become the Stanley or the Yeti of the copper bottle.
That was the vision.
That was the vision.
I was naive enough to pick some silly Italian name for the business. I was like, this is Indian. I should have said Indian.
Right.
But it was fun. I worked on it. I sold that inventory off. I was going to sell in Pike Place Market. I was living a few blocks away from Pike Place Market. I was like, I want to sell. I want to do a stall there and sell it.
About 80 bottles sitting at home. And my wife keeps saying, let's get a stall at the farmer's market and just get rid of these.
Yeah, that's a smart decision.
But I've been gifting them to people and that's been a nice gift.
What I ended up doing.
Yeah. So, cool. So, and then how did Amazon happen? Did you get that role?
Yeah, so Amazon wasn't right away. I was working at Microsoft for a little while after that.
Yeah.
Which was kind of where I met my wife a few months down the line.
Is she Indian as well?
Indian origin. Grew up in California and Washington. She was born in Jalandhar, Punjab.
Okay.
And her family moved here a few decades ago.
So when she was very young, so she's only lived
only lived here, but in a lot of ways, you know how you and I are from metropolitan cities. In the version of India that immigrants or second gen like my wife have been running is also sort of like the 30-year-old software.
Yeah.
So that is where they're stuck in time with their value systems, which was very fascinating to me. Because I'm like, no one says this in India anymore. Like the kind of things that I used to hear.
I see that in Canada a lot.
Yep.
Because the Punjabis have been there for 60 years. Their image of India is from the 70s or the 60s. And obviously India has changed significantly since then. It's like, when you have Gujaratis in East Africa who took Gujarati language with them 200 years ago and still talk the same, but the Gujarati has evolved in India.
Of course.
Or the Fijian Indians and their Hindi. So I feel like that it applies to the values and their moment in time that India was. Usually, at least in an arranged marriage setting, it's very rare that the boy is from India and the girl is from here around. That, the boy has grown up here and the girl comes because it's less adjustment for her.
Right.
Did you face any friction or any kind of nuances on that front? Because for lack of better term, you're the fobby one, right?
Well, technically, I was supposed to be the fob in the relationship. And
Fob means fresh off the boat.
fresh
for
off
our
the boat, yeah.
listeners.
And so we were both working at Microsoft at the time, and we met at the Commons building in Microsoft. I was just pleasantly surprised, like, you know how we're all used to like being chivalrous and like paying for the first meal and such. So she took charge, like even before I could take my wallet out, like she'd already taken care of it. I'm like, this is interesting. This is a different version of an Indian that I'm getting exposed to. And then we talked about travel and gulab jamun, and she had me on chai. She said, like, I make the best chai in the world. I'm like, yeah, we're dating.
Nice. I think more than the small things in life, it would be the bigger things which need to be aligned. And then these kind of nuances take care of themselves.
The challenges that you were asking me about just a second ago, her family is very simple and they've done well for themselves, however, came from nothing. And it was very interesting asking for her. Like, even though we were dating, I'd already sort of bought the ring and everything to propose, but I still had to ask the dad for permission and the parents for permission. So for me, I feel like that aspect of it, I had to do by myself because my mom wasn't here. I'd already lost my dad at the time. And I was like, that was a cultural experience that I feel I did it in a very traditional way. I went to their home, I had a meal at their home, and I respectfully sat in their backyard and I asked, Uncle, would you be kind enough to let me marry your daughter? And, they broke down in front of me, and I was like, in a way, I was like, this is probably the most surreal experience I've had. While I knew I needed to do this, I was like, I can see how traditionally rooted they still are in their value system.
It's a good backdrop for a Pan Parag ad where you say, Baratiyon ka swagat.
Pan Parag se karenge.
For our listeners, it's a after food mouth freshener, and there's this ad from the 90s. With one of the Kapoors, right? Shashi Kapoor.
Yeah.
And they have this wedding scene. And never mind. I'll put a link in the show notes to that ad. Okay. Were there differences in how they wanted to do the wedding? Because weddings are done very differently here than in India.
Yeah, plenty. So I got married here, and my mom was like, we should do the Hindu style. They wanted to do the Sikh style. And so we did both. We had just my immediate friends and family that are in the States come for the Hindu wedding in their backyard. We did that. And then we reset the button. So we forgot that the wedding never happened. And then we started all the pre-wedding Punjabi functions that they do. And so the whole week was a full week-long affair. And then we ended with like a Gurudwara wedding.
But the Hindu style would also be like specific to Punjabi Hindu style. Because I know Gujarati Hindu weddings are also very different, right?
Right. So we had a priest from a Pandit from Kent area. He actually grew up in Delhi, so I think there was some cultural overlap there. I just happened to find him randomly. And he had done the Greh Pravesh, which is the housewarming version of India, for the first home I had purchased for myself. So I was like, hey, I know this guy. Let me just have him do it. And it's cool. He was wearing these blinged up Om Namah Shivaya, which, he was wearing these magenta dhotis. And he made it a fun affair. He explained it to everybody and why certain traditions in the wedding are being done the way they are. And so it was actually sort of a learning experience for her side of the family when they got to see that, that's how it's done. So
that is quite interesting. I remember you telling me a story about buying your first home around that time. Do you want to share that story with our listeners?
It was sort of, how we talk about escalation, right? So I start dating her, I ask her hand in marriage, and then I get a surprise that, hey, I think her and I are the ones running the show here. We're going to be sponsoring this whole thing.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, that's fine. I don't mind sponsoring the wedding, and I think it'll be fair. It'll be a good foundation sort of test for the marriage even before the marriage happens.
Sure.
And then I was like, bro, this money's never going to come back. You can spend it, and there's going to be a party that people are going to forget about in a few months.
Yeah.
There'll be some pictures of it maybe years down the line.
Which nobody looks
at. And so I took it upon myself. I was like, I'm just going to replace my rent with a mortgage.
Okay.
And I went and I found something that I could afford. And the real estate agent absolutely wasn't great because I went in naked with no contingencies.
Yeah.
And the appraisal came low and I was short on. I had to solve some interesting problems. And my mother-in-law was like, what are you doing? I'm like, well, I think this is a good thing, right? You should be proud of me. Your future son-in-law is going to have a home for your daughter to live in.
Sure.
She's like, but you're cutting short on so many things on the wedding budget. I'm like, yes, we have to make some difficult choices.
Yeah.
And so that didn't go well. She calls up my mom and she's like, hey, by the way, your son is buying a house. Should you tell him not to get one? My mom's like, he has always done what he wants to do, so please manage him yourself.
Yeah, but the weddings are a family affair in India. I knew maybe 10 to 15% of the people who came to my wedding.
Same.
Yeah. So ours was a mid-sized 1,500-person wedding, right?
Okay. Mine was minuscule compared to yours.
Yeah, it wasn't 7 days, it was only 3 days.
Sure.
No bridegroom cricket match, right?
Yeah.
But the reception was on a cricket field.
Oh, that's cool.
Because they needed that much space. But yeah, I didn't get to choose the guest list. My parents paid for it. My grandfather got 50 tickets, I guess. And, it's a whole family affair. And maybe that's why she minded, because it's also a social standing kind of
It's
situation.
a social standing thing. And that's what it boils down to, because for them, it was their first daughter getting married, the eldest kid getting married. Sure. And I respected that, because I wanted a destination wedding. I was like, I just want these 1,500 people showing up. But like that got shot down in 5 minutes of sort of talking to them. And eventually, my wife and I joke about this. I have not seen 99% of the people that showed up to our Sikh wedding. I don't know who they were, why they came, who can call them.
Yeah, so when we were on the stage for the reception, people who we didn't know, both sets of parents were there. So they would say, oh, this is so-and-so's aunt and whatever. And you're like, okay, namaste, take a photo, they go. But when they were taking breaks, there were people who would come up and we would both look at each other. Is this yours? We don't know. And that person doesn't have the common sense to introduce themselves, saying, I'm from here. So I'm sure there was a few freeloaders that we didn't notice.
We had booze being stolen from random people. It was very interesting. And random people shaking hands with us and congratulating us. I'm like, okay, thank you. We appreciate that. I had no idea.
Yeah, mine was Gujarati wedding, so no booze to be.
That's right. That was a non-negotiator. My Punjabi
Punjabi
went to Canada and got boxes and boxes of it from the Canadian duty free, just so they could have plenty of booze.
Yeah, I always tell people that Gujarati weddings are the most fun non-alcoholic weddings in the world.
Agreed. I agree with you on that.
Because then once you bring alcohol into the equation, you can't really compete, right? Awesome. So let's take a break here. And then when we come back, I want to talk about your Amazon days and also the volunteering you do to help other businesses.
Absolutely.
And your very interesting mythology project for kids from South Asia. So stay tuned and we'll be right back after these messages.
When you're high, you feel different. You think different, you talk different, you draw different, you listen to music different, but you probably knew that. Problem is, you also drive different, and not in a good way. That's why driving high is illegal everywhere. So if you're high, just don't drive. Make a plan to get a sober ride. Because if you feel different, you drive different. Brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Hello, I'm Chris Erdman. Every Wednesday at 8 a.m. on KKNW, I sit down with inspiring entrepreneurs, creative minds, and game changers to uncover the real stories behind their business. On my show, Made of More, we explore the challenges that they've overcome, the breakthroughs that they've celebrated, and the mindset that drives them forward. If you're ready to unlock your full entrepreneurial potential, Made of More is the show for you, because here we know you are made of more. Every Wednesday at 8 a.m. on KKNW.
Miss a show on KKNW? Check out 1150kknw.com for podcasts of many of our programs. That's 1150kknw.com.
Welcome back to Diaspora on KKNW, where we share interesting stories of first-generation immigrants from South Asia. We're talking to Vibhu Passi, a local real estate entrepreneur who also runs an interesting community program based on spreading Indian culture and mythology. Before we jump back into the conversation, if you like listening to our show, please consider following us on Instagram or leaving us a 5-star review wherever you listen to your podcasts. But before we go into that community program, what did you do at Amazon when you joined?
Yeah, I started off in the Kindle team and then I ended up in the smart home devices team. I was a product manager there and it was a cool gig. I was on the voice of the customer thing, and launching the Echo 10 display device was kind of a cool thing, working with the Alexa folks. And they got me exposed to how smart home technology would work and fit into people's lifestyles. And how tech would make life more convenient in homes specifically. And that's kind of what triggered into getting into real estate to begin with. I was doing it on the product side. Let me see if I can do this in the future. And so was basically launching products at Amazon and ended up walking away from that. And now after a few years of being a real estate agent and broker, I am a vice president of strategy at a company called Upscale and Metro Electric. And what that does is essentially what I used to do at Amazon is now being productized by helping people get like home theaters, whatever technology you can think of. Like imagine Iron Man, right?
Yeah.
And you remember Jarvis from Iron Man.
Yeah.
We can do that. We basically help people get that in their houses. And that was kind of what I was after. The little kid inside me wanted to put cool tech in homes, and kind of how I ended up in real estate is related to that.
Interesting. So I also did the Amazon to real estate journey.
Yeah.
And I took a summer off to figure out what I wanted to do and identified. It was a top-down approach.
Yeah.
I didn't start with real estate. So for you, was it starting with some macro things and then concluding real estate was the fit for you, or did you just know somehow that you wanted to do real estate?
So my intent was always that, hey, if I can be a real estate agent, and as soon as I sort of help people buy or sell their homes, I can also help elevate their lifestyles in those homes. That was the problem I was really excited to solve. And that I sort of did as a complimentary service. I'm like, hey, how do I stand out in like millions
of
agents
very crowded field.
It's a very crowded field. And so I was like, let me eventually give that aspect of what I already kind of know and love doing as a complimentary service to my clients. So I used to give smart home design consults, and I'm like, hey, now that you bought this, you can make this home, your value can go up like this if you did that. Women always love, well, I'm not trying to categorize it, but like a lot, like one of the partners in the marriage always wants the kitchen a certain way, one partner wants the home theater a certain way, kids want the rooms a certain way. So I was like, well, what if it all came together? And I love solving that.
No, I mean, even if you don't generalize, certain, like when I show homes in my property management company, the husband is loving the property and the wife takes one look at the gas range and she just, it's done. Conversation's over because she's probably going to be the primary user of that. So the gender stereotypes can be used in a positive way as well to know what appeals to which person.
Right.
When I have female group of roommates, I'll say this room can be used as a X, and if it's a male group of roommates, it's used as a Y.
Very similar. It's kind of the approach I take.
Yeah. How do you look at the real estate market here? We generally don't talk topical stuff, but I'd be interested to know your thoughts on just where the market is heading in Seattle, because a lot of people trying to sell, not enough buyers. Some people say it's a great time to buy. What are your thoughts?
I'm not going to try and sound salesy. I'll tell you that we finally had a slowdown this year where people that have been on the fence for years should seriously listen to their real estate professionals when they're trying to say that, hey, this is the time to get something before it blows up again.
Yeah.
Why that is happening is, several factors. We don't have to get into individual factors particularly. But what I love about this area is that 60% of the buyers are actually South Asian, 40% of them are Indian, and everything else is the rest. I'm talking about the greater Seattle area in general, all the way up north from Marysville down south to about Tacoma. That's all the markets that I service right now. And in a nutshell, for buyers, this is a great year because they are getting a discounted price and they have way more negotiation power right now that they did not have just about a year ago. So you can, for lack of a better word, squeeze out your sellers. And sellers are being very great. They're starting to realize that this is something that they need to offer, otherwise their homes are never going to sell.
Yeah, and so the flip side of that is if there are not enough buyers, the rental market is red hot right now on the buyer side. Because everybody's trying to rent. And I have, properties are filling up very quickly, and I'm not really having to do much.
See, I can understand that with you because I try to send majority of my investor clients towards you if I can, and I love working with investors, right? They look at it and the rentability and can it basically pay for itself is the first question they'll ask. And at this point, I see more investor activity than first home buyer activity. It should be the other way around based on the way the market's going. But really, I think that by the time it starts, it's sort of like the FOMO people have with a stock, right? It's like the NVIDIA story. It's like, hey, let's try to get in. Let's say, oh, no, it's going to dip. And then it starts to go up further and then they go in.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing with real estate. The human psychology is the same way. It's when they'll start to see that it's, oh, I think we're about to miss the boat now. The FOMO is about to kick in is when they'll kick in. It's going to be a little too late by then. But in general, every year, there's a seasonality in our area. Like, May through early August, there is higher number of homes, at least on the buying side, available, and there's more homes in the market. But I'm guessing on the renting side for you, that's probably a busier period as well.
It's more pronounced on the east side, where you have predominantly families living. Something like a Seattle, where you have a group of professionals renting as roommates. There, it's pretty even. November, December, I have a lot of people who are going through divorces, looking to rent because they don't want to spend the holidays with their soon-to-be ex-partner. So I see a lot of that demand coming in through as well. So, but it's a good market to be renting, for a property manager because your tenants are high quality, your owners are high quality, the properties are high quality, the rents are high, it's tenant-friendly, so the value I add as a property manager is higher. So overall, it's a great market to be.
The
operating
math,
in.
Amazon made me data driven. I wasn't a data driven
Yeah.
guy before that. The math makes a lot of sense to be in this industry here.
Yeah.
And the demand's not going to slow down. And there's just not enough homes that are going to get built in our area, particularly.
Nope.
Like, I don't look at the national market because the microeconomics of the way
Yeah.
things happen in the Pacific Northwest are very different from the way
Very
the country runs. So my buyers, sellers, and investors will come to me and ask me all the time, like, hey, but I saw this in the news. I'm like, ignore it, bro. That's not how this works
Right.
in our market here. It's different. Like, there's neighborhoods where homes are still selling in less than 5 days, and there's neighborhoods where homes have been on the market for 90
Yeah.
days. And
And
beyond.
Amazon bringing people here to return to office.
Yeah.
Not much affordable inventory, multifamily inventory.
Correct.
Those are all going to be factors.
I'm just amazed at how many folks, I guess, maybe it's a part of our DNA, like how many folks from Southeast just want real estate as an asset class on their portfolio. Like,
Yeah.
to me, it's a fun problem to solve. My understanding is it's intertwined in the way we were brought up that, hey,
Yeah. You should have your own.
you should have your own and you
Yeah.
should build it and you should have multiple. And yeah,
Yeah.
of course, you can be a landlord if you want to be.
We don't
So-
know anybody in Bombay who rents. Everybody owns
Wants
and
to
has
own.
owned for 50 years.
Yeah.
And now they're grandfathered in. Like, I couldn't afford to buy in South Bombay today.
Completely understand,
Like,
yeah.
I'd have to sell a 50-acre farm.
Like
in
buying
some-
in downtown Bellevue.
Exactly. You're kind of priced out. But yeah, that was a good, fun business discussion. I don't think I've had too many on my show.
Gotcha.
You mentioned that earlier that you also volunteer and help other small businesses. So
Yes.
tell me more about that.
So how I got into product management, decades ago was I volunteered my time at companies. There was a tech recruiting company, a recruiter used to work here, and I basically used to help her do product strategy work. Then I did volunteer to help an e-commerce business do that. Then I helped a real estate professional who was a real estate investor sort of productize what he was building. And I was like, this is fun. With a brute force and sort of what I do and do not want to do mentality, was trying to figure out what I want to do next. And by this test and trial method that I did, that's how I ended up here. Like, when a friend of mine suggested
Yeah.
that, hey, you should maybe get into real estate, I was like, yeah, actually, that kind of makes sense. I've sort of been in the space, might as well.
Yeah.
So that's how that.
So you just help them with a current business problem that
I
they
do.
have.
So what I do, I volunteered as a strategist. I'll go in as a business consultant, help implement certain technology,
Yeah.
see certain workflow gaps, business process management and improvements. Wherever I see inefficiencies, I would try to point those out. I'm sort of be a in-house business and tech consultant and productize it. And then that's how the relationship with Upscale and Astro Electric also originally
Right.
happened. I was like, I need trade businesses in my portfolio, and I wanted to pull them in. And I think trade businesses are not going to go anywhere. I think maybe an agent might get botted out with an AI bot at some point
Sure,
in the next
but-
few decades. But I don't see...
And
trade
lots
businesses
of
going-
boring businesses are going to come up for sale soon as
They are.
as boomers retire.
We are in the middle of the biggest wealth transition in the history of humanity, actually, at this
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Do you plan to acquire a portfolio of these, like own other types of businesses beyond real estate? Because that's what I'm actively looking
Yes,
to.
I am a big investor in crypto. I wouldn't say crypto in general. Like, there's only the mothership that I focus on. I have diversified in real estate myself. I believe in these two asset classes as the ones that I understand. I don't
Sure.
want to do anything else. I want to stay hyper focused, and anything that is leverage based is what makes sense to me, that I can leverage in the future and essentially build upon more.
Yeah.
And so the two that made sense to me are Bitcoin and real estate. And those
Yeah.
are the two that I focus
Okay.
on.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
It makes sense to focus on what you know, right?
Yep.
I've been looking at acquiring these boring businesses and then rolling them up into, and then getting synergies from scale. And I've done this tech implementation so many times over. So just adding some systems and processes and maybe some remote workers, maybe some centralized accounting, centralized IT, centralized HR, bring about more synergies, and then you brand everything together. So that kind of thing we're looking at. So we evaluate probably a business a month to
Very
like,
cool.
but we look for reasons not to buy it
Right.
because
Poke holes as much as you can. That's an interesting approach. For that matter, I'm actually grateful and fortunate that I fell in the real estate industry. It wasn't a planned move. I almost see all the trade businesses not going away, like plumbers and electricians.
Oh, yeah.
And people that are doing home theater upgrades or whatever it might be. Any kind of trade business that you see that you need day in, day out from a service-based setting.
and they're making crazy money. Like I look at what my plumber makes when there's a leak or a water mitigation required. It's ridiculous the kind of margins they make, and that's part of that whole the promise that has let a lot of millennials down, that we were told go to college and you'll get a good job and you'll make enough to buy a house and retire and you'll get social security. And those guys are all in trouble. They're not making the money they thought they would make. But the plumbers who spend less on their education, they don't have 200,000 of student debt, and they're actually making pretty good money.
Our electrician vertical in our team and business and the HVAC company that recently came over makes more than what an SVP at Amazon makes in a month. They
Oh,
make
yeah.
that in a month.
I crossed my Amazon salary as a program manager in probably my 5th month
Yeah,
as a
awesome,
business
dude.
owner. Yeah, it took much less time than I thought it would.
Right.
So when someone says, "Oh, I want to do something on my own, but I like this paycheck coming in
Right.
every month," and I'm like, "Yeah, but it's not as good as you think it is." Like it's
Right.
what I like doing business here, and I've done business in India too. It's okay to have a profit margin. It's okay to make money.
Yeah.
Because in India, everyone's trying to squeeze you
Correct.
as their vendor, and
Yep.
there's a power distance between the vendor and the client.
Right.
Here, people understand that, yeah, you're a business, you're not a non-profit. You need to make a healthy margin and run your business too.
And that's what I love about the American culture, particularly. I think the fact that there is work equality and respect of every field
Yes.
here is kind of what makes America a good place to live.
Yeah.
I felt that because in college I was help desk guy supporting the school. I didn't feel judged like I would have probably felt in a call center back in India
Yes.
where we were like, hey, this guy's a PO guy, oh, he must
Yeah.
be struggling. But that was a side hustle, and I didn't feel like people were like, oh, this is cool. I was just filling paper and printers.
Sure.
Because the most majority of my job was to put sheets in all
Yeah.
the college printers. But
Yeah.
everyone was like, oh yeah, it's a job, it's pays.
I mean, can you imagine a server coming and introducing himself in India and you'll be like, what are you doing? Like,
Right.
I don't care what your name is. Just
Yeah.
get me my idli, right?
And folks that move here, it takes them a little while to assimilate to that culture, I think. And I take a lot of pride in being an Indian origin guy and being from there because I think you know how the American marketing campaign from the 70s, like America is this amazing place to live, has been this campaign. I think we're in the Indian era now.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, and so we're also in the Chinese era. But I feel a lot of us should not fall into the traps of bringing our ego and pride. Yes, there is a certain amount of pride and ego that comes with that, but like we should put that away and maintain the humility of what our roots are. Really. And I think that people forget that. They're like, hey, treat the server the way the server is supposed to be treated. Treat the air hostess the way they're supposed to be treated. Sometimes they forget that.
There is a concept called cultural context. And
Yeah.
India is a high context culture. The US is a low context. In fact, India is one of the highest context cultures and US is one of the lowest.
an
And
interesting
and
thing, yeah.
what high context cultures do, they are okay with ambiguity. They are very community driven and not individualistic. They're not very punctual.
Right.
Like in Hindi, the word for yesterday and tomorrow is the same. They also have high power distance. They do everything collectively. The individual is not bigger than the family or the organization. And here everything's the opposite. I used to give a lecture about this to like visiting American MBA students in India.
Right.
These are things you need to keep in mind when you're like doing business in India is the concept of cultural context. And there's a dignity of labor here because the power distance is lower. When I talk to my bosses at Amazon, even though the ones who are Indian,
Yeah.
and in Hindi, we have a you for peer and a you which is respectful.
Correct.
Even if they're younger than me, I will always use a respectful you because you're my supervisor. So
Supervisor, yeah. Boss.
even though they're like 5 years younger than me,
Right.
because physically I can't bring myself to say you, right?
Yeah, I've been learning Italian. Italian and French also have that in common. So it's good that some languages have that, where the
Yeah.
you respect version of a you
Yeah.
is well available.
Italy is also a very high context society. They just, if you watch an Italian soap opera,
Yeah.
you'll find a lot of similarities to Indian soap operas.
Yes, I felt that with the trips that I've made there.
Yeah.
It's like a very similar culture, just food and people look a bit different. when I
Yeah,
do it.
like my mom cooks better than my wife,
Yeah.
or my third cousin is obviously coming to my wedding, right? Those things
Right.
are very common across all high context cultures.
See, you and I have experienced, doing things in India as well as doing it here. I
Yeah.
actually have a small business extension of what the Meet the Passi's real estate brand is here. I have been trying to expand, but when I'm talking to my India team, I have to completely switch the context to what you just said. Like the toolkit and the way I'm operating with them is completely different than the
Very
way I'm
different.
operating here in real estate.
Yeah.
This is a regulated market. That's an unregulated market.
Yep.
And the way people operate is, and the decision-making frameworks
It's
are
very
very
different. Yeah, exactly. Tell me about the project you have of exposing kids to Indian mythology and culture.
Yeah, so I grew up, my grandmother drilled a lot of Ramayana and Mahabharata and all these. I mean, we watched all of those growing up. And
For our listeners, those are considered the
Indian epics.
It's mythology and the origin of our gods and all of
Correct.
that.
And like we watch Marvel superheroes now, back then as kids, I grew up listening to these stories.
Yeah.
These are my superheroes. Even as an adult, where like I'm still the same child, I just have a gray beard now. It's the only difference.
Yeah.
But I was like, if there's a way for me to spread what I learned as a kid, I used to
Sure.
make these pyrotechnic Ravanas at home, and we used to stuff them in fireworks and make sure we
Nice.
put on a show for our neighborhood. And
Right.
So I came here and I did that in Fargo for the first time.
Okay.
And I was like, we didn't even have a permit. We had to go in the middle of a farm, like maybe like 50 miles away. And so I was like, this was fun. And I took some of my South Asian friends, Indian friends there. I was like, I should do this. This is fun. Everybody sort of appreciated that I did this. Then I started teaching how to build one. I'm like, how do I scale this? So there's a non-profit organization called Utsav. They did an event about 2 years ago. There was about 6,000 people that came for that. That was the biggest one we've done, is about 25, 30 feet tall Ravana that we did in my home office basement.
Wow.
And kids came together, we built them. It's fun sponsoring something like that because I'm sort of getting to be a child while I'm being creative, and it's an arts and craft exercise that, and then my wife is like, you should explain to these kids why you do this. And you should tell them the story behind this. Like, yes, we portray this king, this Ravana in the story is the evil king, but there are some positive aspects to who he was. And you should give them the significance of why this is a tradition that you're carrying on. And so that's what we talk about. And then my wife and I run this, and now my mom also lives with us. And so the three of us, we try to share these traditions with kids, 6 and older, whoever wants to come in. Sometimes even parents will chime in.
I'm going to include a link to what Diaspora is in the show notes.
Please do.
So that our listeners know why we're burning Ravan. So.
Right. And it's celebrated differently in different parts of the country. It's called Vijay Dashmi in certain parts of the country. It's called Dussehra. And I mean, depending on which flavor of India you're from, it's called different things. For me, it was a very inclusive experience because I got to connect with the Odia community, the Bengali community that does not do that. For them, it's mostly a Durga Puja thing that do around that time.
And for Gujaratis, the 9 days before are more fun than the Dussehra.
Correct. So it was very interesting to see how everyone's celebrating the same time. And then some people were like, hey, let's expose our kids to a different version of what India already does. And so my wife and I enjoy doing it. And we run this small academy. It's not officially an academy, but we run this sort of group where we'll bring in these kids. We'll reach out to our neighbors and friends, and they'll send their kids, and we enjoy it. And we have this video and a presentation for the kids to learn about the basics about why we're doing this, and they get something fun out of it. And at the end of it, it's a fun show. They love seeing fireworks. It's pretty rare to find a kid that doesn't enjoy a fireworks.
Of course. Well, thanks for sharing that. Let's move into our weekly segments. So can we please spin the wheel? So this one is called Maa Ka Khana, which in Hindi means mother's food. Indian people are very passionate about the food they grew up with. So do you have a dish that is and now your mom lives with you, so it's different, but when you would go back to India, was there a certain dish that you'd always ask your mom to make, or nearby in a restaurant that you'd always make sure you have on a trip?
Man, I'm a Maggie guy. I'm a Maggie guy. She used to make this ghee vegetable Maggie. And then her egg parathas.
I'm going to include a link to Maggie in the show notes.
Maggie is
it's like ramen.
It's a movement.
Yeah.
It's a movement.
It's a Nestle product.
Yes.
It's like ramen. It's inexpensive. There's different types of Maggie available. And I think Indian people have really taken it and run with it in terms of what you can do with it.
Correct.
And it's eaten as a dry noodle with veggies in it, sometimes soupy.
Yep.
There's a restaurant called Maggie Point.
Yes, we've been there.
Near UW.
UW.
And it's they don't understand why a bunch of Indian uncles are coming there, at 10 o'clock at night.
He grew up eating that, man.
But so because it's a college area. So,
right.
But that's a good childhood memory you unlocked for me as well, is Maggie. I think I'm going to ask my wife if we can have it for dinner today.
Nice.
So, that brings us to the end of today's episode. So thank you for listening to Diaspora. We hope you enjoyed hearing Passi's interesting story. Remember to check out our show notes for links and more information about the topics that we talked about today. Diaspora is part of the Staying Power network of shows and podcasts, all of which are dedicated to inspiring listeners to build lives of meaning, connection, and value. You can find the Staying Power network of shows, including Diaspora, wherever you get your podcasts. We will be back next week with another interesting story from the South Asian diaspora. Until then, take care and stay curious. And Passi, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much. This was a lot of fun.